Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Pat and Richard, for inviting me to participate in this important and timely panel. And it's a great honor to be among such a great company. So going back to one of your questions, and really what I want to focus on today is, and obviously Iraq has dominated the news for the past 2 or 3 weeks now, and as Richard said, a lot has been written about it. One of the main point that I would like to focus on, and it's is this notion that Saudi Arabia is somehow responsible for much of the unrest in Iraq, and specifically that it is somehow that it's actually supporting ISIS, the Al-Qaeda offshoot that is now based along the Iraqi-Syrian border, and so you know, if all one has to do is spend a few minutes on social media, and they're bound to come across dozens, if not hundreds, of entries advancing this notion that Saudi Arabia is responsible, that they support Daesh, as some people call it, and that somehow the violence and unrest along its borders is a good thing for Saudi Arabia. Now, it's one thing for casual observers to jump to that conclusion. It's something else for you know, experts to essentially make the same argument. Now, as you alluded to, Richard, I've come across a number of articles by fairly well-respected analysts and scholars that are essentially, at least the titles imply, that there is indeed a relationship between Saudi Arabia and Daesh, between the Saudi government and Daesh, and that it's actually an official relationship. Now, what's interesting is that if you read the actual articles, invariably just about everybody at some point adds a caveat by saying, well, there is no actual real evidence suggesting that, but they still make the argument anyway. And I've seen that exact phrase used over and over again. And of course, there's no doubt that obviously Saudi of Daesh, the Saudi government has actually put some of these former militants or former fighters who were in Syria and themselves over to Saudi authorities. They've been put on TV and have recounted their cautionary tales about their experience in Syria, and you know, these fighters are fairly upfront. They say yes, there are Saudis in Syria, and they tend to gravitate towards ISIS. But that's obviously not the same thing as saying that there's official government support of Daesh or of Al-Qaeda. Now, there's been the other issue was that there's money from individual donors and charities in the past that was going to Al-Qaeda affiliates, but the Saudis have really cracked down on that. They have what seems to be a fairly effective infrastructure that really has cut down on the money going from individuals and charities to questionable and to militant groups. Recently, it's actually Kuwait that has come under the spotlight. I believe it was the Treasury Department itself has singled out Kuwait for not having the legal infrastructure to prevent money going from individual donors and organizations to militant groups in Syria. So it's not Saudi Arabia. It's my understanding that the U.S. government and other governments actually have praised the Saudi effort in that regard to stem the flow of money. And of course, and again, while there's no evidence suggesting that the Saudi government is supporting Daesh, there's plenty of evidence saying that Daesh has actually vowed to take the fight to Saudi Arabia once it is done, once it has accomplished its supposed mission in Syria and Iraq. There's more than a handful of videos on YouTube by Daesh supporters, including Saudis. You see them, they're ripping out their passports, thereby denouncing their citizenship and actually vowing to liberate the land of the two holy mosques once they're done in Syria. More importantly, obviously, the Al-Qaeda has a long history of conducting and carrying out terrorist attacks in Saudi Arabia going back to 2003 to 2006, and many more have been attempted since. Just past the last month, the Saudi authorities busted a cell that they actually referred to as a vast network that was inside Saudi Arabia that was acting as a conduit between Syria-based Al-Qaeda, Daesh specifically, and the Al-Qaeda affiliate in Yemen. There was dozens of arrests made, and this has happened over and over again. Obviously, the Saudi government has arrested many Al-Qaeda supporters over the years. Many of them have been killed. So that's what's substantiated. That's what's documented. To me, it really doesn't make sense for Saudi Arabia to actively and to willingly support one of its neighbors with whom it shares a vast border to unravel and to become a failed state, and to have an Al-Qaeda state go and rise up from the ashes of this civil war. It defies common sense to me. It also, I think, defies a long history of Saudi Arabia's, whereas foreign policy has predicated on, I think, more than anything else, on stability. And again, we see this in how it's approached the crises in other countries. Perhaps Egypt is the most obvious example where, for lack of a better term, the Saudis prefer reactionary policies. They've never been known to support revolutionary politics or policies or groups. Syria is the one exception, and I think even though their inclination initially was not to support, or at least was called, the Saudis called on the Assad regime for many months to come to a peaceful resolutions and to meet the demands of the mostly Sunni protesters. Obviously, that didn't happen, and so once Assad cracked down on armed groups as well as obviously civilians in Syria, I think the Saudis were compelled to play a role, and they've been pretty upfront about supporting the right of the Syrian people to defend themselves. Some people have been able to document actual support to Syrian opposition groups, but not ISIS, not in Iraq, and not in Syria up to this point.